Coming up now on Animal Outtakes, we're traveling down memory lane, taking a look back at some of our favorite segments. Like this mesmerizing creature who captivated us. Plus a visit to somewhere known as the crown jewel of the National Audubon Society Nature Centers. And we can't forget when we got up close to these intelligent, emotional creatures. This and much more straight ahead on Animal Outtakes. The octopus. It's a top predator who can change color and texture almost instantaneously. It's a highly intelligent creature with the ability to adapt easily.
Right now we're behind the scenes with our octopus. We have two species here at Mote right now. One of them is a common octopus. They're found all throughout the Caribbean and the Keys and along Florida. We call it our holding octopus, so it's a newer animal. We're getting it more used to having people walk past and us interacting with its exhibit. I love octopus because they're extremely intelligent. People think that usually it's only animals with spine, like, charismatic mammals are the really smart ones, but octopus are really good at solving puzzles. So in the wild, they're using their really smart brain to hunt and to be able to find their food. But in the aquarium, we don't give our animals live prey because it's not as safe for both the animal it's eating and for its own health. So I provide what I call environmental enrichment. So that's what we kind of call our puzzle toy wall. So I will provide toys that they can manipulate and solve to open to find their food because they're very food motivated and it uses their intelligence at the same time. So I'm putting some shrimp in here. So with enrichment, I usually start out with wiffle balls, and as they become good at solving it, I'll kind of add these baby rings around it to make it a little more difficult for it to get the food out. And so the octopus will do essentially what I just did, just in reverse. So it just has to figure out how it can work to pull the shrimp out of the holes. And sometimes they'll pull out all of the rings before they pull the food out. One thing that's especially cool about their arms is that if they lose a portion off the end, they can actually regrow them. Or if a sucker gets injured or ripped off or whatever when it's hunting, it can regrow those as well. And it's always a fine balance of having puzzles that are hard for them to solve, but not so difficult that they'll just give up on them entirely. And these guys, because they are invertebrates, they are a lot more susceptible to abrupt changes in the ocean. So I have to be really careful in that I maintain really healthy, clean water for them to live in.
And now we leave the aquarium and we head outside to learn about the importance of Florida's wetlands. Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary encompasses 13,000 acres in southwest Florida, and it's primarily composed of these all-important wetlands.
Every corner, you never know what you're going to see. You just have to look for it.
Renee Wilson knows what she's talking about.
So these plants are relatives of the pineapple, and they're called epiphytes.
From plants to animals to history, the Communications Associate is passionate about Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary.
Historically, these lands were viewed as useless. Mosquito and snake-infested swamps didn't do anything good for people. At least that was the thinking 100 years ago. But now we realize how important they are for our own water quality. That is something that we have come to learn, is that wetlands really help keep our water clean.
As a great book once said, Renee, in the beginning, and here we are at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. I think we found a bit of heaven here, haven't we?
I can only agree. This place is special, and a lot of people thought about that many years ago when the sanctuary was established. You know, the sanctuary was established in 1954 by the National Audubon Society because they wanted to protect it from logging. But Before the logging threat, there was another threat here that they were concerned about, and that was the plume trade. Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary is a critical part of the western Everglades. So as you can imagine, the Everglades is a very large part of the southern part of Florida. Pretty much everything south of Lake Okeechobee, and even a good part of what's north of Lake Okeechobee, are considered part of the Everglades ecosystem. And as you can imagine, when rain falls on the land, it trickles down across the surface of the land and eventually makes its way out to the sea through something called a watershed. So we are here at the Corkscrew Regional Watershed, and we are the headwaters for a lot of those trickles of water that eventually make their way out into the estuaries of the Bonita Springs and the Naples area.
While walking along the more than 2-mile boardwalk, visitors may see a variety of plants and animals. You just never know what you'll find.
We have had a lot of Florida panther sightings. We work closely with the Fish and Wildlife Commission to monitor their presence on our sanctuary. So here in Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, we have a variety of different habitats. Obviously, the swamp is the one for which the sanctuary was named, and panthers are commonly found in the swamps, but they're also easily seen in areas like this. This is an upland habitat, and there have been times when people have seen them even on the boardwalk. Birds are by far the most observed species because there are so many different types of birds that live here. So there's a lot of woodpeckers, red-shouldered hawks, bald eagles. There's certainly a variety of wading birds like white ibis, great egret, great blue herons make nests here. There's roseate spoonbills are one of the most beautiful species to see. So birds tend to be the top of the list, but we also frequently see raccoons and squirrels.
How important is it that this sanctuary stay exactly this way, the sanctuary? And could it ever be sold and something urban crawl come in here and destroy this magnificent area?
So we have 13,000 acres in ownership by the National Audubon Society here. We have a boundary drawn around it on paper, and that essentially is keeping any buildings out for now. But there is development creeping up on all sides of us. So this is one of our water level gauges, and we have a staff member that comes out here and checks this gauge every day, and we have 60 years of data on water levels right here. Water levels in the sanctuary have a certain trend. They are very low in the winter, and then by summertime the rain starts falling in Florida, our wet season approaches, the water levels start to rise, getting to their peak in summertime, and then slowly start to trickle off as dry season approaches towards October, November, and December. However, we've noticed that there's less water in the sanctuary around those shoulder seasons, the dry season. There's much less water here than there used to be 20 years ago. A lot of this is because of excess use by neighbors. There's groundwater being pulled out. There's canals and flood systems in place to protect communities from flooding that shunts the water away from the sanctuary and rushes it out to the Gulf of Mexico much too quickly. Let me explain a little bit about what a wetland does. And that is, it holds water in a spot, and it sits on the surface of the land, and it slowly seeps down, recharging our aquifers. It also gradually oozes across the surface of the land till it meets the sea. At least historically, that's how it was through the river of grass that is known as the Everglades. Since people have arrived, a lot of changes have been made to the way our land works, the way the water flows, and the importance of protecting property and people from the dangers of flooding, which is real. However, wetlands like those here at the sanctuary store excess surface water. Runoff comes into these areas and it holds it here until it can gradually make its way. When we start to channelize the surface of this land and send water through canals out to the sea, it will reduce the opportunity for that water to be cleansed and filtered through these plants, their roots, and the limestone. It goes right out to sea where nutrients that may have been picked up by that surface water can then become a direct pollutant in our estuaries and our Gulf of Mexico. It should make people feel lucky that this is still here. People should want to spend more time in places like this because there's fewer and fewer places like this anymore. Keep your eyes open, notice the nature that's around you, and hopefully appreciate it, because if we don't do anything to keep it safe, it won't stay safe.
So how can you help? Start with a visit. You can go online to their website for more information. And you can also become involved in community efforts to protect water resources. Coming up next on Animal Outtakes, it's a job you couldn't pay me to do, extracting venom from snakes. After the break, we look back to the time we thought it would be fun to see up close how and why these guys do what they do. That's next.
For 40 years, I'd been burying my emotions and all of the trauma.
I was grasping desperately for independence and hope. I found it with a tail and a cold nose.
I call him my battle buddy, because every time we're out in the public, he has my back.
Every time those demons start talking, he knows, and he's right there at my side. Mustang truly did save my life.
Cobras, mambas, and vipers. These are species of snakes you want to stay away from. Right. But for the team at Southwest Florida Venom Farm, they are handling some of the world's deadliest snakes every day, and they're doing it for science. This certainly isn't what you want to see up close, the fangs of a venomous snake. But it's all in a day's work for the crew of Southwest Florida Venom Farm. What type of snakes do you have here in the facility?
We have lots, almost every type of venomous snake you can imagine. Everything from cobras and vipers and mambas to the native stuff we have here in Florida, like rattlesnakes, copperheads, coral snakes, cottonmouths.
Now, where do they come from?
It's a good question. Some of them we produce in-house, and some of them we get from the countries of origin. So if they come from the country of origin, Malaysia, Africa, Indonesia, once they come to the States and they get housed at our facility, they go through a quarantine process of approximately 90 to 120 days. When they're cleared medically by our vet, then we put them on the venom line and we extract venom from them.
So how many snakes would you say are in this building right now?
At any given time, we may have between 300 and 1,000 animals.
Oh my! I have to take a deep breath on that one. Here the staff extracts the venom from these reptiles. And it's a job that requires years of practice, lots of permits and regulations, and being somewhat of a daredevil.
We're going to do a diamondback rattlesnake. They're not poisonous. There is a couple species of snakes that are poisonous, but poison would mean that if you touch that animal, you're going to be, poisoned, right? Venom has to be injected. So the snakes are venomous. They're not poisonous. Venom is a complex mix of proteins that we're still trying to understand, and those proteins do certain things to individuals.
Venomous snakes have sharp, hollow fangs which can inject venom as a form of defense or to immobilize prey. Some species have neurotoxic venom. This will cause paralysis to the respiratory system. Others have hemotoxic venom. This toxin destroys tissue and helps with digesting prey. How often do you milk the snakes?
That's a good question. It really depends on the species. So certain species will do every 2 weeks. Other species that produce smaller amounts of venom, infrequently will do every 3 to 4 weeks. So mambas, for instance, we extract from them every 3 to 4 weeks. Coral snakes we might not do for maybe once a month. Some of the rattlesnakes we can do every 2 weeks.
Truth be told, there is much more to learn about snake venom. For the crew of Southwest Venom Farm, it's a risky business, but it's all in the name of science. Scientists from all over the world request these samples for research, which could one day take a bite out of cancer, diabetes, and diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Stick around, there's more to look back on after the break. Now for a look back at the time we met Stanley. This grizzly bear captured our hearts. He's been at Elmira's for quite a few years, and he has no trouble keeping himself busy or keeping visitors engaged with wondering, what's he gonna do next? This is Stanley, a brown bear who often captures your attention with his endless interest in enrichment activities. And today, he's looking for treats. Robin, we saw the star of the show. I know that all of the animals are stars, but he shines brightly. Stanley.
You can watch Stanley all day long. In fact, I frequently will stop and just watch Stanley for a while. He's just so much fun.
Robin Greenwood leads up Elmira's Wildlife Sanctuary, an all-volunteer group that cares for this massive bear. And they estimate Stanley is about 8 years old.
We have a general idea of his origins, however, we don't know for sure.
Details are sparse, but she says Stanley was quite habituated to people, so she guesses he was taken from his mother at a very young age.
And he's very active. In fact, our Fish and Wildlife officers have commented on how active and healthy and what good shape that he is in. He is definitely the star of the show. He's just so fascinating. That's why our tour start and end with Stanley. And that's probably where we end up spending the most time, because you can just sit there and watch him. He is like a 5-year-old with a toy. And
now, how much does he weigh?
Our best guess is probably about 450. There's actually a formula that you can use based on how long he is and how tall he is and so on and so forth. But anyway, best guess is probably about 450.
How does he keep that girlish figure?
Well, he actually is on I don't want to exactly say a strict diet. However, we are very careful to not overfeed him. Since he's here in Florida, he doesn't hibernate like he might in Alaska or something like that. And of course, also it's kind of warm here. So you'll see a lot of people will say, well, he's a lot smaller than the other grizzlies that we see. Okay, well, he doesn't need to fatten up like the Katami bears in Alaska in the fat bear contest. He doesn't need to do that. He gets food all year round. If he's fat and hairy, then he's even hotter than ever. I mean, this is Florida. Grizzly bears in general,
hibernation.
Yes.
If they don't hibernate, is that okay?
That's fine. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of bears that don't necessarily hibernate the entire winter. Sometimes, and then this includes black bears too, they'll sleep for a while and then they might come out and forage for some food and then go back in. Generally, and that's why they fatten up. They do this whole fat bear thing because when they go in, they got to live off those fat stores. But they're not necessarily asleep. That's when mama bears give birth and they're raising the babies and all that. So they're doing things. They're just staying in the dens, and they're living off those fat stores. But they're not necessarily sound asleep. So here in Florida, it's hot. They're not cold. They're just going to be bears.
Robin says they're hoping to raise enough money to create an even bigger habitat for the incredibly smart bear. So he's living large.
He is living large, and we're hoping he's going to be living an acre larger real soon.
How
so
wonderful.
that's the plan, and so we are definitely actively fundraising for a 1 acre expansion for Stanley, and really looking forward to that.
For information on how you can help, go to the website elmiraswildlife.org. And you can also visit their Facebook page for more videos and information about Stanley. We'll be right back with quite the spa session. And now for one of my favorite memories. A visit to the Myakka Elephant Ranch to see how connecting with elephants in person makes all the difference.
We are at Myakka Elephant Ranch. We're a conservation center for elephants. We specialize in educating the public and also raising money for conservation efforts. We do have 3 elephants. One is an African elephant and 2 are Asian elephants. My parents actually had elephants 10 years before I was born, so really kind of born into it. They had Lou since she was 1.5 years old. Her name's Lou. I was born 10 years later. My name's Lou. So both kind of after my grandfather. So technically I wasn't named after the elephant. Yeah, bring her. Yeah, that's good. So just growing up with the elephants, always being around elephants, created a big passion for me. Just their size, their intelligence, just how majestic they are. They're just amazing animals. Come on, Carol, move up. Carol, come on. Being an elephant caregiver, you do have to build a relationship. You have to spend a lot of time. You also have to, they have to know you're not going to hurt them in any way. You're going to provide them food, shelter, security. You really start building a relationship with that animal. So I get up at about 6 o'clock in the morning, get here, we first feed them their breakfast. They love their breakfast. It's about 15 pounds of grain, like a horse grain. We put a lot of vegetables, special vitamin supplement in there for them, omega-3s, salt, different minerals. After that, we put them outside, we clean their stalls, then we go into the bath.
So Lou, it's bath time.
It is bath time.
What are you doing here, and why is this so important for the elephants?
All right, so first thing we're doing, we're getting her nice and wet. So if you look at the water, it's actually just absorbed by that skin, keeps them from getting over dry, really moisturizes their skin. Really important for an elephant to get water on their whole body every day.
Now, do they like it?
An elephant, anything involving water, they love.
I notice she's getting her trunk wrapped around there like she's just so relaxed and just letting it all happen.
Lou loves her bath, but sometimes she starts purring, so we have to listen for that.
How old is she?
Lou's 37 years old. She's an African elephant.
Now, 37 years old. Young, middle-aged, old?
She's about in her prime. So really for an African elephant, anywhere from 50 up is starting to get old. The Asian elephant, it lives a little longer. So you're gonna come right here.
Okay.
So you grab this, and you're gonna squeeze that trigger all the way down and apply some soap. Look it over, look it over.
Hey, baby.
So what we're doing right now, we're applying soap. Our soap is called Safari Wash. It's made in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh, she loves it.
It's made just for elephants, hippos, and rhinos. So it's non-toxic, very good for their dry skin. Let's get behind her ear here.
Let's do that. Purring.
Just keep spraying.
Yeah, she's purring. She's loving it.
All back there.
Oh, I'd like somebody to do this too. Don't worry,
And
honey.
you can go on the outside of her ear here.
I'd be content to. Look at you. What is amazing though is as fast as we put this on, it is absorbed.
Yeah, and that really shows you how important the water is for the skin. Don't forget the top of the back there.
Yeah, well, you know, she's a
If
little...
you notice on the top of her back, there's a lot more callus.
Yeah.
So really for the African elephant, when the sun exposure hits their back, they need that extra layer of callus to protect them.
She's a...
The African really can't get sunburned because they have so much callus. The Asian elephant does have a lot thinner skin, so they can get a little sunburnt. So that's why they love to throw the mud, the dirt, the hay, water on their backs to really protect them.
This is an experience that I would hope everybody would have because this is an emotional experience for me. I just love these animals. We hope you had fun and learned a thing or two along the way. We'll be back here again next week with even more animals and some wild adventures. Until then, thanks for watching.